The radar screens at the United Nations Space Defense Force headquarters glowed bright red. Captain stared at the data coming in from satellites orbiting Earth. His hands shook as he read the numbers. 9,900 ships were coming toward Earth. 9,900. Had been a military officer for 20 years. He had fought in small battles and defended Earth from smaller threats. Nothing prepared him for this moment. He picked up the phone and called President directly. There was no time for normal procedures. "Mr. President, we have a problem," said. His voice was steady even though fear filled his chest. "A massive fleet is approaching Earth. Our estimates show 9,900 warships. They will reach us in 7 days. President said nothing for a moment. Then he asked, "How many do we have?" 234, replied. "And most of them are old. Many cannot even leave Earth's atmosphere properly." The president understood what this meant. The invaders had a numerical advantage of 42-1. Technology reports coming from the UN observation stations suggested the alien ships were far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. It was not a battle. It was an execution waiting to happen. Convened an emergency military council. Generals and admirals from every nation arrived within hours. The room was quiet and heavy with dread. A map showed the approaching fleet. Blue dots represented human ships. Red dots filled the screen in terrible numbers. General Washington, the top military strategist, spoke first. She was from the United States and had fought in multiple conflicts. "We cannot win a traditional battle," she said bluntly. "But winning is not what we need to do right now." "What do you mean?" asked Admiral Hayes from Britain. His face was pale. "We need to survive," said. "We need to make them pay a high price. We need to show them that Earth is not an easy target. Maybe if we hurt them enough, they will decide we are not worth the cost." Nodded slowly, was correct. Humanity could not match alien technology, but humanity had something else. They had knowledge of their world. They had desperation. They had something to protect that mattered more than anything. Their home. On the 7th day, the transmission came. A voice spoke in English. The invaders had learned the language somehow, probably from intercepted signals. The voice belonged to Architect Prime Haz, the commander of the invasion fleet. Haz was a crystalline being from the species. Its voice was cold and sharp like breaking ice. "People of Earth," the voice said, "I am Architect Prime Haz. The Empire has come to claim your world. You have 3 options. First, you may surrender immediately. Your civilization will be absorbed into the Empire. Most of you will survive. Second, you may resist. You will all die and your world will be stripped for resources. Third, you may do nothing. We will land and take what we want. Choose now." President broadcast a response that was heard across the entire world. He sat in front of cameras and looked directly into the lens. "We are Earth," the president said. "We have lived on this world for hundreds of thousands of years. We built civilizations. We created art and music and science. Our children play in our forests and swim in our oceans. We will not surrender our home to anyone. We will fight. We will fight with everything we have. We will fight until we can fight no more." The broadcast was translated into every language on Earth. People heard their president's words. Some wept. Some became angry. Some became determined. News channels showed the approaching fleet. Astronomers explained that the alien ships would arrive in less than a week. Called his commanders together again. This time they were not afraid. They were ready to die if necessary. "Here is what we will do," told them. "We do not fight like a traditional military. The enemy has more ships. The enemy has better weapons. The enemy has faster ships. But we know this world. We know its secrets. We know how to survive in places that kill outsiders." Pulled up maps of Earth. Mountains, forests, deserts, deep oceans, places where humans thrived because they understood them. "We will be everywhere and nowhere," continued. "When they land, we do not meet them in open ground. We take them into our jungles. We lead them into our mountains. We attack from places they cannot see. We use their own weapons against them when possible. We make every kilometer of Earth cost them something. We make them bleed." The plan spread across the world. Military units were repositioned. Civilians were trained. Weapons were hidden. Factories that had made cars and computers began making weapons. Engineers designed traps using Earth's own environment. Biologists studied what aliens could and could not survive. A young American woman named worked as an engineer at an aerospace company. She led a group that figured out how to disable alien drones using Earth's magnetic fields. She worked for 3 days without sleeping because she knew her work might save lives. Her daughter was 8 years old. worked to give her daughter a future. An old man named Robert had fought in wars 50 years ago. He was 73 years old. He volunteered to lead resistance fighters. He told young soldiers that he had already lived a full life. These young people deserved a chance to live theirs. He showed them how to fight an enemy they could not defeat in open combat. A doctor named Walker trained volunteers to treat wounds from alien weapons. She did not know how alien weapons would burn or cut human bodies, so she studied the data from every source available. She made plans for every scenario she could imagine. She was determined that if humans had to die, they would at least have a chance to survive their wounds. Across Earth, people prepared. They were afraid. They knew the odds were nearly impossible, but they also knew something they did not understand. Humans could face impossible odds and find ways to survive. Humans could adapt. Humans could sacrifice. Humans could fight for their world. Stood at the observation center and watched the sky. The red dots were getting closer. In 48 hours, the ships would arrive. Earth would face its greatest test. One man with 200 outdated ships stood against 9,900 advanced warships. But was not alone. Behind him stood billions of humans. They were farmers and doctors and teachers and soldiers. They were young and old. They came from every nation and every culture. They came from mountains and deserts and cities and small villages. They had one purpose. They would defend Earth. Picked up his communicator. His voice was calm and clear. "All units, this is command," he said. "The enemy approaches. Everyone go to your positions. Defend. You're the first ships broke through Earth's atmosphere with brilliant blue flames trailing behind them." Architect Prime has watched from the command vessel. The crystalline being felt confident. This would be simple. These humans had nothing that could stop the Empire. The first shock came when 100 landing craft attempted to enter the atmosphere at the same time. Earth's magnetic field was stronger than the sensors had detected. 23 ships lost power and crashed before reaching the ground. 2,000 soldiers died in those crashes. Has was not concerned. 2,000 soldiers were nothing compared to the total force. There were millions more waiting in orbit, but the commander made a note. Earth's environment was unpredictable. Captain watched from a command center buried deep inside a mountain. His technicians had detected the crashes. They could see the burning wreckage on radar and satellite images. The first casualties were already piling up, and they had not even reached the ground yet. "Phase 2, said calmly. "All units begin operations." The soldiers that did land came down in 3 major locations. One group landed in North America near the Rocky Mountains. Another landed in Africa near the Sahara Desert. The third landed in Southeast Asia in the dense jungles. Has believed spreading out would allow them to conquer quickly. The strategy was a mistake. In the American mountains, Lieutenant Hayes led a team of elite soldiers and trained civilians. The soldiers emerged from their landing craft expecting to find primitive warriors with crude weapons. Instead, they found soldiers who had trained for months in mountain combat. They were tall and their armor was advanced, but the mountains belonged to humans, and his team used every advantage. They blocked the valley where the soldiers marched. They rolled boulders down slopes at the advancing aliens. The weapons fired back with energy that melted rock, but's team vanished before the weapons could reach them. This was not conventional war. This was guerrilla fighting in terrain that killed outsiders. One soldier tried to pursue into a steep canyon. The ground shifted under the alien's weight. They fell 200 meters. Its advanced armor could not protect against Earth's gravity combined with sharp rocks. It died as surely as any human would have. In Africa, the desert fought for humanity. The soldiers wore armor that kept them cool in space, but Earth's sun was different than the sun that warmed their home world. The armor systems failed after 12 hours in the extreme heat. Soldiers began dying from exposure. Humans who attacked them knew the desert. They knew where water could be found. They knew where to hide from the sun. They knew none of these things. A woman named Sarah led desert fighters. She was from a nomadic background and understood the Sahara like they could never understand it. When soldiers chased her team, Sarah led them to places where the ground was thin. The crust broke under heavy armor and soldiers fell into caves below. Some died immediately. Others suffered injuries that left them helpless. In Southeast Asia, the jungle was the deadliest teacher of all. Humans had lived in jungles for thousands of years. They knew which plants were poisonous. They knew which animals hunted at night. They knew how to move silently through thick vegetation. They did not. Dr. Washington, who had been reassigned to develop biological strategies, made a critical discovery. They were vulnerable to Earth's pathogens. Their immune systems had evolved to fight alien diseases, but Earth's germs were new to them. Identified which diseases could weaken them without harming humans. She worked with specialists from dozens of nations. They did not create new diseases. Instead, they cultivated existing ones and released them in areas where soldiers operated. Soldiers began getting sick. Their advanced medical technology could fight some Earth diseases, but not all of them. Hundreds have died from infections that would barely slow a human down. The jungle fighters used this advantage. They moved close to dying soldiers and took their weapons. One weapon could kill 10 human soldiers if humans tried to fight directly. But if the weapon belonged to a dying or weakened alien, humans could steal it and use it against the. After 30 days of fighting, they had lost 470 ships. They had lost 200,000 soldiers. More kept dying. Architect Prime has received reports from the ground. The situation was worse than the commander could have imagined. The humans were not trying to win battles. They were trying to make the invasion so expensive that they would leave, and it was working. But the commander still believed victory was possible. The Empire had conquered 847 worlds. This was just one more world. A strange world with a harsh environment, but still just one world. Has sent more troops. More ships descended to the surface. More soldiers marched out of landing craft ready to fight. What they found was an entire planet that was fighting them. Not just soldiers, not just military units, but farmers who knew how to set traps in fields, teachers who knew the local geography and could guide resistance fighters, children who understood the terrain and could warn of approaching forces. In cities, humans used buildings and streets that they understood perfectly, though with their advanced weapons had to be careful not to destroy what they were supposed to conquer. Humans with their knowledge of urban spaces did not have the same limitation. They could destroy buildings to trap alien soldiers. They could collapse structures to kill the invaders. A resistance fighter named Hall was not actually a soldier. He was a carpenter, but he understood buildings and structures better than any military engineer. He designed traps that used gravity and leverage. Armor was extremely strong, but it was heavy. If the right weight fell on the right joint, even advanced armor could break. Taught other carpenters, construction workers, and engineers. They built traps throughout the cities. Soldiers died walking through city streets they thought they controlled. After 60 days of invasion, they had suffered more than 1,000 ships destroyed. Millions of soldiers were dead or dying. The remaining forces controlled only the areas where they landed. They could not advance. They could not take new territory. Everywhere humans lived, the aliens faced 90 days into the invasion. They had lost 4,200 ships. Architect Prime has faced pressure from the Council back on the home world. The commander had promised quick victory. Instead, the Empire's forces were being destroyed by a primitive species. Messages from the Council became harsh and demanding. The voices questioned Haz's competence. They demanded results. Haz knew that continuing the current strategy would lead to complete failure. The humans were adapting faster than they could predict. Every tactic the invaders tried, the humans found a counter-tactic. Every weapon they used, the humans learned to defeat. The commander made a decision that would seal the invasion's doom. Has ordered a direct assault on Earth's major cities. The commander believed that if they destroyed the cities and killed millions of civilians, the humans would finally surrender. The remaining human resistance would collapse in despair. Has ordered the attack to begin immediately. Captain monitored the communications. He had learned how to intercept their signals. When understood Haz's plan, he felt ice in his blood. They were going to attack the cities where billions of people lived. They are going to try to break us psychologically, told President. They will kill civilians. They will destroy our cities. They think we will surrender when we see our people dying. What do we do? President asked. We execute Operation Last Stand, said. We throw everything at them, every weapon, every soldier, every resource. We do not ask for mercy. We do not ask for peace. We make them pay for every city. We make them pay in blood and fire. The assault began with orbital strikes. Energy beams from ships in orbit burned down into cities. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread through streets. Millions of people died in minutes. But the humans were ready. They had anticipated this possibility. While weapons destroyed buildings above ground, humans moved into underground structures. Subway systems became shelters. Bunkers protected against the worst of the attacks. People huddled together, terrified but alive. And then humanity struck back. Dr. Washington had been developing weapons using captured alien technology. Teams of engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked underground in laboratories and workshops hidden beneath the destroyed cities. They had built weapons that used technology against These weapons were crude compared to the originals, but they worked. Anna led a group of technicians who had repurposed a captured weapon. Anna had been an aerospace engineer before the invasion. She had learned fast. She had studied alien technology with determination that bordered on obsession. Now, her team aimed the stolen weapon at a massive command station orbiting above North America. The weapon fired once. The energy beam shot upward through Earth's atmosphere. It struck the command station with tremendous force. The station was nearly destroyed. Hundreds of officers died, including several high commanders. The military structure was damaged severely. In Europe, a different team prepared for a suicide mission. Lieutenant Gary and 100 soldiers boarded a captured shuttle. The plan was simple and deadly. Reach the main defense grid station, destroy it, die in the explosion. Gary had a daughter named Emma. She was 5 years old. He had not seen her in 90 days. When he boarded the shuttle, Gary held a photograph of his daughter. He looked at her face one last time. Then he sealed the shuttle and prepared for death. The shuttle rose through the atmosphere. Defenses spotted it immediately. The alien weapons fired. The shuttle was struck multiple times. It should have been destroyed instantly. But humans had learned from captured ships. They had reinforced the shuttle's armor. It held together long enough. Gary's team reached the defense grid station. They crashed directly into it. The explosion was tremendous. The defense grid was destroyed. With the primary defense system gone, human forces in orbit could launch attacks that had not been possible before. Ancient satellites that had been weaponized fired at ships. The weapons were not very powerful, but they damaged the alien vessels. More importantly, they showed that humanity was fighting back in every way possible. Across Earth, similar battles erupted. Humans attacked with everything they had. In China, soldiers coordinated attacks on landing zones. In South America, resistance fighters blew up alien supply ships. In India, civilians worked with military units to sabotage infrastructure. Has watched as ship after ship was destroyed or damaged. The commander sent more forces to replace the losses, but the replacement ships died just like the others. The humans were not winning because they had better technology. The humans were winning because they would not stop fighting. Something was happening to the soldiers that did not expect. They were becoming afraid. For 847 worlds that had experienced only victory, soldiers fought knowing that victory was inevitable. They were trained to dominate, not to survive desperate battles. But on Earth, soldiers died every day. Some died from human weapons, some died from Earth's environment, some died from accidents because they did not understand the planet's hazards. More importantly, some died from hopelessness. An officer named reported to Architect Prime had seen 200 years of conquest. The officer was crystalline like all, but where Haz was cold and calculated, was starting to experience what humans would call doubt. The soldiers are losing will to fight, said. They understand that this world will not be conquered quickly. They see no end to this conflict. They die every day. They retreat every day. They have never experienced anything like this before. Haz did not respond immediately. The crystalline commander was processing information. The mathematical probability of victory continued to decline. The cost in ships, soldiers, and time was becoming unacceptable. But Haz had committed to this invasion. Retreat would be humiliating. Then messages arrived from the council. The Empire was facing other problems. There were reports of uprisings in recently conquered territories. Word had spread through the galaxy that they were struggling against Earth. Species that the Empire had conquered were considering rebellion. If the loss to Earth, the Empire itself might collapse. Has finally understood the reality. Earth could not be conquered. Earth could only be escaped. 120 days after the invasion began, Architect Prime has issued the order to retreat. All forces still fighting were instructed to return to their ships. All ships in orbit were to begin withdrawal from Earth's space. The humans who were still fighting could not believe it at first. For 4 months they had fought with everything they had. They had expected to die. They had expected Earth to fall. but the enemy was leaving. Captain sat in his command center and watched the radar screens. The red dots that represented ships were moving away. They were getting smaller. They were leaving Earth. Closed his eyes. He had not slept in 3 days. Now, finally, he allowed himself to believe that Earth might survive. The retreat was not orderly or controlled. Thousands of soldiers desperate to leave Earth crowded onto landing ships. Ships that were damaged struggled to achieve orbit. Some crashed back to Earth. Others made it into space but could not join the main fleet. Architect Prime has had ordered the remaining 100 ships to stop at a specific location in space. The commander wanted to regroup. The commander wanted to gather data about what had happened. The commander wanted to understand how the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been defeated by a primitive species. Captain and his commanders had anticipated this exact moment. They had been preparing for it for weeks, understood that if they were allowed to regroup and escape, they might return later with a larger fleet and a better strategy. "All units, this is command," transmitted. "The ships are leaving. We are not finished. We are going to pursue them. We are going to make sure they cannot return to Earth. We are going to remind them why Earth is a world of death." The human fleet lifted off from hidden locations across Earth. 234 ships that had been carefully preserved and updated now climbed into the sky. They were old ships with minimal firepower compared to what they possessed, but they had something they no longer had. They had human pilots who would not surrender. Anna had worked on updating the human ship's weapon systems. She had integrated stolen technology into human vessels. The combination was crude but effective. The ships were not as powerful as vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. Humans had always been good at making do with less. Dr. Washington had one more gift for she had developed a biological weapon that could be deployed in space. The weapon would not kill them immediately. Instead, it would affect their navigation systems. The biological component would grow inside the ship's computer systems and disrupt communications. They would not be able to coordinate effectively. As the human ships approached the fleet, the biological weapon was released. Tiny particles floated through space toward the vessels. The particles were so small that detection systems could not see them properly. They passed through air filtration systems. They spread through the ships. The first vessel to notice the problem tried to jump to hyperspace. The navigation system failed. The ship could not calculate a safe jump point. It remained in normal space. The humans attacked immediately. One by one, ships experienced communication failure. Vessels could not coordinate with each other. Commanders could not receive orders from HAS. The carefully organized retreat became chaotic. Ships fired on each other by accident. Some vessels stopped trying to escape and instead attempted to fight back. The human pilots were not trained for space combat. They had learned everything in the last 4 months. But they had one advantage. They were flying for their home. They were flying to escape. In the bridge of a human ship called the Phoenix, Captain Hayes coordinated attacks. Had been a test pilot for human aerospace companies. She had never expected to fight in space. Now she was hunting vessels with the precision of a predator. The ships tried to retreat toward a safe distance where they could jump to hyperspace. But the human ships blocked their escape routes. They attempted to use their superior firepower. The human ships were hit multiple times. Explosions tore through human vessels. Crews died in vacuum. Ships lost their weapon systems. But the humans kept fighting. A young pilot named flew his small fighter ship directly at a destroyer. The destroyer was a massive ship with weapons that could vaporize a human vessel instantly. Knew this. He flew straight at it anyway. His ship fired everything it had. The destroyer was struck repeatedly. It was damaged but still flying. Made a choice that would be remembered in human history. He turned his fighter directly into the destroyer. The human ship crashed into the alien vessel's engine system. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Was 23 years old. He had given his life to protect Earth. The battle raged for 3 hours. Ships that had been damaged on Earth were destroyed by human fire. New ships were struck and crippled, but some vessels broke through the human blockade. 17 ships made the jump to hyperspace. They escaped Earth's space and disappeared into the galaxy. They carried the survivors of the invasion. They carried the soldiers who had lived through impossible battles. They carried Architect Prime Has and the officers who had failed to conquer a world that should have been easy to conquer. Back on Earth, humans realized the invasion had truly ended. The remaining ships in orbit had been destroyed or disabled. No enemy vessels circled Earth anymore. The sky was blue and empty of warships. Captain transmitted a message to all human forces. "They have left Earth," said. "We have survived, we have won, stand down from combat stations. Now we begin the work of healing and rebuilding." The message was repeated in every language. It was transmitted to every nation and every group of humans still fighting. The response was immediate. Soldiers who had been ready to die collapsed in exhaustion. The constant fear that had filled every human heart for 120 days finally released. President addressed the world on all broadcast systems. Billions of humans heard their president speak. "We have faced the unsurvivable," President said. "We have faced an enemy with weapons greater than anything we possessed. We have faced an enemy with ships numbering in the thousands. We had only small numbers and primitive technology. But we had something they did not expect. We had determination. We had knowledge of our world. We had love for our homes and our families. We refused to surrender, and that refusal saved us." The president paused. When he continued, his voice carried emotion that many had not heard from him before. "Our world has changed forever," President said. "Millions of our people have died. Our cities are destroyed. Our land has been by battle, but humanity survives. And I promise you we will rebuild. We will honor the ones we lost by creating a better world. We will make sure that Earth is never weak again." The 17 ships that had escaped became legends. They jumped through hyperspace toward the home world. The ships carried survivors and officers and soldiers. They also carried stories. They carried reports of a species that could not be defeated by technology alone. They carried tales of humans who would fight to the death for their families and their world. When the ships reached the council, the reports were delivered. Architect Prime has submitted himself for judgment. The council stripped the commander of rank and title. Has was exiled. The crystalline being would spend the rest of its existence in isolation, knowing that it had led the greatest military force in the galaxy to humiliating defeat. But before being exiled, has made one statement to the council. "Do not underestimate the species called humans," the former commander said. "They are not the most advanced species. They do not have the most powerful weapons. They do not have the largest military force. But they have something that is more dangerous than technology. They have the will to survive. They have the will to fight for what they love. They will sacrifice themselves for their children. They will never surrender to despair. If you encounter humans again, understand this. You will not conquer them. You can only escape." 1 year had passed since the last ship left Earth. The planet looked very different from what it had been. Many cities were still in ruins. Some would never be rebuilt in their original form. The death count was staggering. 12 billion humans had died during the invasion. That was nearly 1/5 of Earth's entire population. But Earth was healing. The war had accomplished something that seemed impossible before. Every nation on Earth was now working together. The United Nations was no longer just a discussion place where different countries debated policy. It had become the true global government. Every leader understood that division meant death. Unity meant survival. Captain had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's United Defense Force. At first, had wanted to retire. He was exhausted. He had spent 120 days making decisions that cost thousands of lives. He bore the weight of every soldier who died following his orders. But President had asked him to stay. The President explained that the galaxy now knew about Earth. Not all species in the galaxy were hostile but some might be. Others might be curious. Earth needed military leaders who understood how to survive against overwhelming odds. Accepted the position. He opened a new military academy on a mountain in what had once been Colorado. The academy was built partly in the ruins of the old world and partly in new structures designed by both humans and the few alien friends Earth had already made. Young soldiers came to the academy from every nation, taught them the lessons he had learned during the invasion. He did not teach them to expect victory. He taught them to expect difficulty and to find ways to survive it. "They had better weapons than we had," told a group of new soldiers. "They had larger ships, they had more soldiers, they had more experience in warfare, but they lost because they did not understand this world. They did not understand us. They thought technology alone could win wars. They were wrong." A young woman from India raised her hand. Her name was. "Commander, what should we do if another alien species invades?" asked. Looked directly at the young soldier. "You do what your ancestors did," said. You use this world as your weapon. You know the places where enemies cannot follow. You know the dangers that will kill an outsider but not hurt you. You make them pay for every inch of Earth. You refuse to surrender. And when they realize that they cannot break you, they will leave, just like the left. 6 months after the Academy opened, a ship arrived at Earth. It did not come from it came from a species called the Collective. There were nothing like where there had been crystalline beings shaped like geometric forms. They were soft and tentacled. They moved like they were swimming through air. The ship landed at a designated location outside of New York. President went to meet the delegation. Captain was there as well. The president was nervous. This was the first peaceful contact between humans and an alien species. A named moth emerged from the ship. The being's voice was soft and musical, very different from the harsh voice of Architect Prime Has. "I am Moth, representative of the Collective," the alien said. "We have come to Earth because of the reports we received about your species. You stopped the Empire. Do you understand how remarkable this is?" "We did what we had to do," President said. "We defended our home." "Yes," Moth said. "This is why we have come. We want to understand how you did this. We want to know if your species would be interested in friendship with the Collective. We have no desire to conquer. We wish to trade and share knowledge." President and Moth talked for hours. The conversation led to agreements that would help Earth with medical technology and environmental restoration. Earth would share knowledge about adaptation and survival in harsh environments. The two species would trade goods and scientific discoveries. Dr. Washington became Earth's chief liaison to the Collective. She spent half her time on Earth and half on space stations. She worked with scientists to develop new medicines. Together, they created treatments for diseases that had plagued both species for centuries. Worked with a scientist came from a species that valued knowledge above all else. They had told that they had never seen any species adapt to new challenges as quickly as humans. "How do you do this?" asked one day as they worked in a laboratory orbiting Earth. Thought for a moment before answering. "We have to," said. "For most of our history, Earth was trying to kill us. We lived in caves where predators hunted us. We faced ice ages that froze the world. We survived diseases that killed millions. We learned to adapt because the alternative was extinction. When they came, adapting was the only way we knew how to survive. It was not a choice for us. It was the only option we had." Made a sound that had learned meant understanding and respect. Anna left military service and started a company that built ships using combined human and technology. The ships were beautiful and efficient. They used less fuel than either species had developed alone. Anna's company became one of Earth's largest corporations. But Anna did not forget what the invasion had taught her. She built in safety features that protected the crew from every danger she could imagine. The engineer who had worked on magnetic field weapons became a teacher at the military academy. She taught young soldiers how alien technology worked and how to adapt it for human uses. She also had another important job. She watched her daughter Emma grow up. Emma was 10 years old now. She would inherit a world very different from the one her mother had known. Robert, the old soldier who had led resistance fighters, passed away from injuries he had suffered during the invasion. At his funeral, thousands of soldiers came to pay respect. Robert had trained more young fighters than any other person. His students had gone on to protect Earth and work for peace in the galaxy. His legacy was one of determination and sacrifice. President addressed the world on the 1-year anniversary of the invasion's end. "We have lost much," the president said. "We have paid a terrible price, but we have also gained something precious. We gained proof that humans can survive anything. We learned that we are stronger together than we ever were apart. We discovered that our world, this difficult and dangerous place, is actually our greatest strength." The president paused and looked directly at the cameras. "They sent 9,900 ships to conquer Earth," President said. "Only 17 came back. This was not because we had better weapons. It was because we understood something that our enemies did not. We understood that some things are worth dying for. Our families are worth dying for. Our homes are worth dying for. Our future is worth dying for. And as long as we remember this, no force in the galaxy will ever be able to break us." The broadcast was transmitted across Earth and through subspace signals to space and to other species that had begun learning about humanity. The message spread through the galaxy. The species called humans had stopped a galactic superpower. They had done it not through superior technology, but through determination and sacrifice. They were a species that would never surrender. Captain stood on a mountain overlooking a valley in what had once been called the United States. The valley had been devastated during the invasion, but now trees were growing again. Humans were rebuilding. New cities were rising from the ruins of the old ones. Beside stood a young girl. She was the daughter of one of his soldiers who had died during the invasion. The girl's name was Sophia. She was 7 years old. Sophia held his hand as they watched the sunset. "Commander, will the aliens come back?" Sophia asked. Thought about the 17 ships that had escaped. He thought about the warnings that Architect Prime has had given to the Council. He thought about the thousands of years of history ahead for humanity. "Maybe," said honestly. "But if they do, we will be ready, and they will learn what they learned. They will learn that humans never give up. They will learn that this world will always fight back. They will learn that we defend our home and our children with everything we have." Sophia looked up at the commander with serious eyes. "I want to be a soldier when I grow up," Sophia said. "Like my mother was, I want to protect Earth." Smiled, he knelt down to look at the young girl directly. "Then you will make us all proud," said. "We will teach you everything we learned. We will make sure that Earth is always strong, and we will make sure that every young person like you grows up free and safe." The sun set over the valley. The sky turned red and orange and purple. The first stars began to appear. Somewhere up there, the 17 ships were still traveling through space. Somewhere out there, other species were learning about what had happened at Earth. But down here on the world called Earth, humans were rebuilding. They were learning from their past. They were planning for their future. They were preparing their children to inherit a world that had been tested and had not broken. The invasion was over. The rebuilding had begun. And humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive and weak, had proven itself to be something far more remarkable. They were the species that survived the unsurvivable. They were the species that would face whatever came next. The Council listened. Some dismissed these warnings as the words of a defeated commander making excuses. Others remembered. Throughout the galaxy, word spread about what had happened at Earth. 17 ships returning from 9,900. A world that could not be conquered. A species that should not be underestimated. But the victory was not complete. Some ships remained in orbit. Some ground forces were still being evacuated. The humans had one last fight to win. They had to make sure that every ship left Earth's space. They could not allow any of the invaders to establish a new base or attempt another invasion later. Has stared at the reports in disbelief. The commander had expected a planet full of primitive beings who would surrender quickly. Instead, they faced an entire civilization that would never surrender. Worse, this civilization was using the planet itself as a weapon against them. The cold and emotionless crystalline being began to understand something new. This world was dangerous. This species was dangerous, and the price of conquest was becoming too high. "Homes, defend your families, defend Earth. This is where we make our stand." Above the planet, the fleet began to slow. They were preparing to attack. The invasion of Earth was about to begin.